Hello and welcome to a Back Pages Tonight Christmas special. Now, if you're a fan of the show, you'll know that each weekday night on Sky Sports News, we bring you a first look at the headlines making the morning's newspapers. But for Christmas, we've come to a restaurant in the heart of central London to sit down and review what has been a phenomenal year for sports news. And over the course of the next hour, we are going to pick the 10 biggest stories of 2024, counting down from 10 to 1. Hello and welcome to a Back Pages Tonight Christmas special. What a phenomenal year it has been for sports news. Over the next hour, we're going to be looking back at the 10 biggest stories of 2024. Those charged with that unenviable task are four of the UK's best sports journalists, or at least people who didn't have big plans this festive period. Welcome along to you all. We've got John Cross from the Daily Mirror, we've got Jonathan Liew from The Guardian, we've got Mark Ogden from ESPN, and we've got Charlotte Dunker from The Times. Now, the panel have all debated and selected their biggest stories of 2024. We've then redebated, collated, and ranked them in order 10 to 1. We'll see how we get on in terms of unison on that. What could possibly go wrong? Shall we begin? I believe we can begin with Jonathan. You've got cracker number 10 on the Christmas theme. Could you please pull it? Okay.
Oh,
Here we go. Go on, John.
well, this really should be you, Jonathan. Luke Littler reaches World Darts Final.
You almost stole it from the man, because you were captivated by this, weren't you, time last year?
I do like my darts. Over the autumn of last year, you'd get whispers. You'd hear little whispers about this kid who's 16 years old, and he's going to be a star one day. He was winning junior tournaments. He was a JDC champion. He won the World Youth title. But what you don't know is what happens when they go on that stage. Alexandra Palace at Christmas, it's just a whole different environment. And some players, it breaks them. Some players spend a whole career trying to conquer that environment, and some it's like a surfer standing on the top of a wave. And as soon as he stepped into that arena, Luke Littler felt like he was born for it, and it produced some of the greatest darts we've ever seen.
Did you start to think he could win it in his first entry when he beat Van Barneveld? Was that?
Yeah, well, actually, it was Christian Kist. He beat Christian Kist in the first round, and then he beat Andrew Gilding, who were two former major winners. And the standard of darts he was producing, it suggested that it was going to take something special to stop him. You just don't know how it's going to go, especially when the pressure mounts up. But it seemed like every match he was playing, he was gaining in confidence, and the crowd were feeding off him. There was this almost like a bubble of hype that he was surfing on, and it was an incredible story, one that darts has not really known in its history.
Yeah, I just think the legacy that he's built. I was reading, I think you can buy Luke Littler dartboards for children for Christmas, and they were saying they've sold 100,000 of them. And I just think there's a whole generation now of kids and younger people who are now interested in darts because of him.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, I know Jonathan obviously likes darts, but a lot of us didn't know about him until he burst onto the scene in that tournament. And then a year later, we're talking about him, sports personality. I think he's a household name now, isn't he? I think I read the intro to someone's piece and it said wasn't even a household name in his own house this time last year, and now he's a household name across everyone's home in the whole entire country. So what he's done for that sport is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, I think it was just the boy next door story, really, for me. And that's what commanded so many column inches, wasn't it, across the papers, just in terms of, sort of enjoying a kebab to celebrate every win, and kind of, whether he could actually have a drink or not, and, and just basically just really captured the imagination of the nation, really. And it's just, I think it was a great story, and he sort of grew with momentum, didn't he, all the way to the final. And it was just, I remember that night of the final, it was such a thing. It was absolute box office, wasn't it? You had to be tuned in. Everyone was behind him. It was a great story. It was just absolutely everything about a really good, feel-good news, kind of sports story. It was fabulous.
It was a better story in the way that he lost as well, because it's almost like the Rocky story, isn't it? You build up this momentum and you come everyone's favourite, and then you're going to win it. It's the fairy tale, but you don't win it, and it's almost like that just shows how at top level sport, elite sport, darts, anything, you have to be the best, and he is obviously a huge talent, but the fact he didn't win it means this year it's an even better story if he does win it, you know. So it's just that going so close and just missing out, I think makes it a better story.
Because it was Luke Humphries' year. I mean, he won the Grand Slam, he won the World Grand Prix. Yeah. He was clearly the best player in the world, but it took phenomenal darts in that final, and he was down and out in that final. Littler should have won it, arguably. He kind of miscounted on 58, missed that double two, and that would have put him, I think, 6-3 up. Or sort of, sorry, that would have put him 5-2 up. Loves his darts. And it took that for Humphries to come back from the brink, and that was an incredible story in itself.
Yeah.
Because Humphries has been through his own journey, and in any other year, you know, he would have been the star of the sport, and he's almost kind of been upstaged a little bit.
He has. It's a great year for Luke Littler, and I think he's talking about 20 or 30 years more to come. Let's talk number 9 on the Christmas Cracker 2024 list. That's you, Mark.
Well, let's go for that. Whoops, no bank.
These very budget crackers. Okay, so Keely Hodgkinson wins 800 metre gold at the Paris Olympics.
Okay, how big, Mark?
I think it was really big, and I think, you know, over the last 2 or 3 years, Keely Hodgkinson has gone so close. She's got so many silver medals, you know, Mary Mora, Athing Mu. There's just 3 superstars of 800 metres, and it looked like she was going to be the one that kept missing out. So the fact that she actually managed to win a gold medal at the Olympics, is, you know, it's the pinnacle of athletics, was a real story. But I think, obviously, Athing Mu missed out because she didn't go through the US trials, and she beat Mary Mora in the final, which, again, is a big thing because that was one of her huge rivals. It's almost like co-over style, but with 3 of them. But she's become like the poster girl of you know, UK athletics. I think you mentioned Sally Gunnell before. She's a name that will transcend sport now. She will get young girls involved, you know, young kids involved, and I think her story of determination just really saw it through. And I think the fact that she's got this gold medal now, she really is like, you know, one of the biggest names in UK sport.
Yeah, I think the Olympics was fantastic as an event. I thought it was a brilliant, absolutely. I love watching it, and sort of whether it was Alex Yee and, you know, the triathlon and everything that, you know, that sort of encapsulated. But you're right, the last 10 days or so of the Olympics, it's all about the athletics, and she was the one that lit up the athletics track. And for me, it was very much about the Team Keely feel. Basically, there was lots of good stories about the way that she was coached, brought through, the way that she evolved and developed as an athlete, and then to complete it all in such resounding fashion and win so comprehensively, I think was a great story.
I think you've got to go back to probably like Jessica Ennis-Hill or Dame Kelly Holmes to be, when you're thinking about, if you're not an avid watcher of track and field all the time, they're the sorts of names that you remember, and getting that gold medal has sort of put her amongst those names. And I think Kelly Holmes was saying that, and for Keely Hodgkinson to hear that probably one of her idols is putting her on a level footing with her, I think, yeah, what she's done as well, like we were saying about Luke Littler for the sport, I think Team GB and then UK Athletics are hoping to use her as the poster girl.
To publicise the sport.
Exactly, and they made a loss last year of over £1 million, and I think in the next 2 years they're hoping to break even, and having someone like her who they can help sell sponsorships through and help get more people to events and generate funding for the sport, I think it could be massive.
Indeed, yeah, she's going to be, I think, 26th the next Olympics, talking about 2 or 3 more events. Right, let's move on to number 8 from Keely Hodgkinson.
There we go, going on across.
Go to the table. Oh,
yes!
Thanks.
Got it, Mark, do the honours.
Let's have a look. So,
that's a
got
word
Christmas
search.
word search.
Suspense now.
So, Jimmy Anderson retires reluctantly.
Reluctantly, how do we reflect on it, Jonathan? Has he retired? Did he retire?
Well, it was an assassination, wasn't it? He gets summoned to a hotel room, and Brendan McCullum and Rob Key are there, presumably dressed all in black. And
he said they had caps on and they were in a bar, and you could just imagine them being, I know the bar they were in Manchester, and it's very dark and gloomy, and you just can imagine them sat in the corner like plotting how they're going to tell him.
Yeah, and they just, after, 2 decades, they say, well, it's over. We're not going to take you to the Ashes, and we're moving on. And I think Jimmy was never going to get to that point himself. He's just one of those bowlers who just wanted to bowl. He kept himself in incredible physical shape. I think you could make an argument that even at the age of 41, 42, he was still one of the best 4-seam bowlers in England. But for a team that are trying to win away from home, that have set their sights on the next Ashes, you do have to kind of go into that transition at some point and bring other players through. And I think that the extent to which a lot of the other pace bowlers have come on in his absence and with his guidance, because obviously he's a coach now, I think it's probably the right decision at the right time.
This is the difficult thing, isn't it, with legends in sport? You can either be too loyal and let them go until it's too late, or you can be ruthless and say, look, your time is up. And you've got to say, he's in his 40s and he's been around for 20 years. You can't really criticise, McCullum for making that decision because, will he be around at the Ashes? Will he be the force at the Ashes? And I think Jimmy Anderson probably says, yes, he will be. But it's that fine line, isn't it? At some point you have to say, look, this is the end. If you're not going to make the decision, we're going to make it for you. But obviously, he's a legend of the game. It was quite brutal as to how he did it. But if England win the Ashes, then that'll be the right decision.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough call because it is that at the heart of that debate. When do you move on? When do you move on the legend, really? And I just think he's recently done some interviews around the release of his latest book, and listening to that, it feels like he was so reluctant as we trailed it there. He was so reluctant to go, even to the point of his wife was devastated.
Well,
his wife was angry.
Should they have done the whole artifice of the retirement, or should it have been Jimmy's time is up and he's going to play one more Test match and have a celebration?
Yeah, I do think it might have been a better call because it ended up him talking about how he left after the final, played his final Test and ended up in the wee small hours, didn't he? Sort of in a chicken shop, I think, in Soho, basically, kind of because he'd just been out at sort of the end with his sort of kind of teammates and it had sort of filtered down to very few. He's one of the all-time greats of English cricket, so I didn't think it was played out particularly well, and I didn't think maybe it got the sort of kind of send-off, because if he's feeling a little bit hurt and damaged, I guess that's natural, but is that the right time? I'm not completely convinced.
No, as well, yeah, some very painful moments and reflections from Jimmy Anderson. Team, we'll take a quick break there. That's the countdown 10-8. When we'll come back, we'll continue looking at the biggest sports stories of 2024. Now, Daniel Dubois demolished Anthony Joshua at Wembley in front of 96,000 fans in one of the great sporting moments of the year. But did it make our top 10? Welcome back to our Christmas special, counting down the biggest sports stories of 2024. Still with us, John Cross from The Mirror, Jonathan Liew from The Guardian, Mark Ogden from ESPN and Charlotte Dunker from The Times. Let's get straight to number 7. Who's got number 7, Charlotte?
Ready?
Let's make it bang.
John wins again.
Well, many years of practice around the Christmas dinner table. Lewis Hamilton signs for Ferrari. Wow, what a story that was, wasn't it?
Saved deadline day.
Yeah, it did. What an amazing signing. The biggest transfer, really. And if you wanted a reminder, I thought, of how big Formula One is, it was just in the following day's papers. It was just, it absolutely wiped out back pages, inside spreads, and it was a huge story. It's Lewis Hamilton, the biggest star of F1, arguably, signing for the glory, of Ferrari and this opportunity. I think it's so interesting to hear Lewis Hamilton speak recently about how he thinks he's kind of maybe, it's not stop blaming the car, I'm getting slower. If you're Ferrari, it's not the message you want to hear before he starts for next season. But it also kind of does play into does it reinvigorate him as a driver? And I think that's the key. For me, I still think he's got the hunger and desire to kind of break records and obviously break the biggest one by winning another Formula One championship. And I think that, Ferrari and the rejuvenated car gives them that opportunity to do so.
That is the big question, isn't it? Is it too late? Is it like Casemiro signing for Manchester United? Is it a guy that's got a great past, but he's not quite got the future? And the reputation is that he's the best we've ever seen. And obviously Ferrari, the biggest team and the most glamorous team, but
Do you fear it's a marketing move maybe than a sporting one?
It could be, but it could also damage Lewis Hamilton's legacy, because you don't want to go to Ferrari and be a guy that spends 2-3 years driving around and not winning anything. He has to go there and win.
I love the romance of it. I think you can quibble with whether it's a smart decision to make, especially at this point in his career, whether it's a smart decision for Ferrari. But I think there was a part of him, after everything that he's achieved in the sport, he didn't want to retire without racing Ferrari, and I kind of love that. It's obviously the most iconic name in the sport, and there was a history there. There was a heritage to Ferrari that other teams don't bring. Whether or not they have a car that can help them compete, I don't know. But I just love the idea that he didn't want to let go of the sport without fulfilling, probably what would have been a childhood dream for him.
It's going to be a huge story in 2025, isn't it? Watching that in Formula One. Right, so panel, let's get to number 6. Who's got number 6, Cracker?
You
Oh, it's
have.
me, is it? Yeah. Go on then, John. You're the pro at this.
Let's go.
Oh, it's got a knack.
I've done it again. Sorry. Oh, Eric Ten Hag sacked by Manchester United. ... Eventually, with the emphasis on eventually.
Yeah, it took a while, didn't it? I think we went to the FA Cup final expecting him to go, win or lose, and he hung around. But I think
That was the line before the FA Cup final, by the way, wasn't
it
it?
was, yeah. And people say, well, it was wrong. It was wrong. He didn't get sacked, but circumstances were strange at United. There was every chance he could have gone, but I think the new board Ineos were kind of taken aback by the reaction of the fans. I don't think they expected to beat Man City in the finals. I think the fact that they won the game, the fans made it clear they wanted Ten Hag to stay. It made it a difficult situation, and ultimately they made the wrong decision to keep him because it was clear from way back that he wasn't the right guy. I think we've already seen that within a few weeks of Ruben Amorim coming in, what a difference a top coach makes. Ten Hag wasn't equipped to manage Man United. He was out of his depth, personality-wise, tactics-wise, and I think the players, didn't really buy into his methods. They were confused by it. We were confused by it at times. And I think by the time they eventually moved him on, it was 6 months too late. And you could argue that it's probably cost them a Champions League qualification spot this year. Who knows how far it set them back, especially when you look at the money they spent in the summer. Some of the players that they signed that were just not good enough for Man United. But they made the right decision eventually, but yeah, too little too late in many ways. You should have gone after the cup final.
I've never known a story like it in as much as that Ten Hag sees out the FA Cup final. I genuinely believe at that stage, well, obviously it's been proven they've not actually made that decision, and they're basically going to see how it plays out. They've gone for the emotional ticket really, and then he's won another final. We shouldn't overlook that. It takes something special
Best
to win
moment since
silverware.
Fergie?
Well, I mean, he's delivered 2 trophies, reached another final, and he was absolutely adamant and he was unshakable in his belief that he had done a good job and there would be more trophies to follow. The clear thing was for me is that if you leave Eric Ten Hag in charge, United would, hurtle towards mediocrity if they hadn't already reached it in terms of their league position and wouldn't be in the Champions League places. That's the problem. And as much as I admired his kind of ability to win trophies, win one-off games, it just seemed the most bizarre set of circumstances. And for weeks, obviously during the Euros as well, you had this sort of kind of backdrop playing out when they were literally interviewing other managers with a manager already in place. Now tell me, when has that ever happened before?
Well, they've done that before.
They've
done that before the cup final as well. United denied it, but maybe it wasn't someone in an official capacity having an official meeting with other managers. But other managers were sounded out before the cup final, and I genuinely think if some of them had been more enthusiastic about it, or there'd been a better fit with the people that they spoke to, regardless of how that FA Cup final went, he could have left on a high and they could have brought someone else in. But then it's like a sliding doors moment, isn't it? If they'd hired Tuchel said to Tuchel, you can come in before the cup final, keep it quiet. Ten Hag wins, he leaves, Tuchel comes in. Tuchel's then not the England manager, and Man United don't get the man who they think genuinely can get them back to the top. So the decision to keep him on was wrong, but does that then mean the outcome in the end is better for them?
History will judge Ten Hag a little bit more kindly than I think people, certainly United fans, are prepared to judge him right now. I mean, he did clear out a lot of the deadwood in that squad. He dealt with the Ronaldo issue, which
But he replaced it with Deadwood as well.
But it's younger Deadwood. It's more marketable Deadwood. But he will prove himself to be a decent coach somewhere else. He had a vision. I just think he couldn't, for whatever reason, convey that vision.
The first season was, third place, won the League Cup, FA Cup final.
Arguably his best season. And he clearly had a vision of United being a high-pressing, high-energy team, and then he tried to turn them into a transition team. And for whatever reason, he didn't quite get the personnel he wanted. He had a lot of injuries in defence, but also I think he sort of failed on the ambassadorial communication part of the job.
I think too often he got the personality he did want. People like Anthony and Matthijs de Ligt, that players that you think the United really need these. So he was given.
He spent over £600 million on 21 senior players across 5 windows, I think it was. So, and he was involved in those discussions.
You think all of those signings?
I'm not saying all of those were definitely the 100% the one that he wanted, and there's a reason why United have now changed things in the background as well in terms of recruitment and bringing in football director and bringing in all those people. There is a very good reason why, because if you look at Man United's recruitment hit rate in the last decade, it's not been good enough. So I wouldn't lay it all at his door, but I'd say he did want that at least 75% of those players were players that he thought would fit in his system, and then it just hasn't worked out like that at all. So it's just more wasted money and for what? They've not improved really, have they?
No, he has to be tied to Anthony, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, he pushed for Anthony, and Anthony must go down as one of the Premier League's all-time great mistakes. I mean, he's ridiculously overpriced, one of the most one-footed players at a top club you'll ever see. And basically, what does he deliver? I mean, honestly, it's clear that Ten Hag, I don't think, was quite, up to the job for Manchester United. The size of Manchester United. We underestimate how important for a global brand and club like that is, that communication. And, it just wasn't good enough. I could never understand exactly what Ten Hag's football identity was, what his brand of football was. You just couldn't work it out. And I don't think that's because he didn't want to, but he just couldn't impose it upon the team and get the best out of the players.
Worked at Ajax, but not at Manchester United. Ultimately, we'll see if Ten Hag comes again in 2025 and beyond. Welcome back. This is the Back Pages Tonight Christmas special. We're counting down the top 10 stories of 2024, and we are in to the top 5. Who's got number 5? Jonathan?
Give it a go. Yay. Off we go here. I'm trying to get the jolt this time. Okay, so Thomas Tuchel appointed England head coach. Crossy, that's your...
That's my
Specialist subject.
My domain. Well, it played out in the most bizarre fashion, really. And I do think ultimately England have got themselves a very good manager, and he's been brought in with this most obvious and simple brief: winners the World Cup, and he's got an 18-month contract to do so, basically. But the whole circumstance of how it actually played out was the fascinating thing, I think, in the newspapers, I think, and that's what dominated Back Pages, because there's no doubt about it. I do think that Lee Carsley was in the frame, and I do think that Lee Carsley was an option for the FA. I think as time wore on, and I'm not just talking about that disastrous defeat for England against Greece at Wembley. It was obvious that they, looking in other directions. But then Lee Carsley's mixed messages in press conferences, Pep Guardiola being sounded out, and it just played out a kind of a little bit in an ugly fashion, I would say, for the recruitment process. And that kind of almost detracted, I think, in many ways, from the actual, appointment of Thomas Tuchel. You're looking at sort of kind of a German in charge of the England national team, unthinkable a few years ago. Doesn't particularly bother me, I must say, if basically as long as he then sort of kind of delivers. But it also plays away from that kind of the vision of England recruiting an Englishman and through the St George's Park coaching setup, which for me, I think still matters.
The thing is that you're right about that, but which English coaches read it? And by the way, which of these English coaches the FA spoke to did they actually speak to? Because nobody's put their hand up yet to say, I spoke to the FA.
But how discreet was it all as well? We compare that to Ten Hag's situation.
It was discreet. It was very discreet. It was a bit of a shock when it happened, but I don't know if the FA wanted to get to that point. I think, they ended up with the right guy at the right time, but I think they started, like you said, that campaign with hoping that Lee Carsley would get the job, that do enough, because they wanted that kind of pathway to come through. But they've got a Champions League winner in Thomas Tuchel. It's a great appointment, but it's the way it happened. Like you say, it just didn't really stack up right, and I'm not sure that the FA came out of it looking great, to be honest.
Well, I mean, if you're Eddie Howe or Graham Potter, do you want the job just because of your passport? I think people talked about Tuchel's passport, but do we want to give it to someone who maybe isn't the best coach available just because of where they're from? I mean, I think it's fine if you're choosing a coach who knows the system, a kind of a De La Fuente type coach, but that is familiar with the pathways, that can progress all the different age groups and has a kind of a unified philosophy. But just blocking someone out of the Premier League who happens to be English, that didn't seem like much of a logical step either.
No one had a problem when Serena Wiegmann came in and started winning things for England. Everyone was celebrating the fact that they started winning again. So I think it will be the first thing that people use to beat him with a stick with if it doesn't go right. They'll be saying, oh, it's because he's not English, we should have hired someone who's English. But if by some miracle he takes them to the World Cup and he wins it, people will be asking for statues of him outside Wembley and all sorts. So I just think it's very easy to sit, like Jonathan says, in this idyllic world where it's someone that's come through the pathway at St George's Park. And I think it was Dan Ashworth that said that years ago, wasn't it? And he said, what we're building here in terms of we want coaches from England, we're going to improve them, and then they're going to go through, ideally like Lee Carsley has. If that was the pathway and that's the ideal person to do it, but I think we all saw over those times that while he's fantastic for the under-21s, I don't think it would have worked out in the long term for the seniors. So Thomas Tuchel, for me, seemed like the best man for the job.
I mean, no English manager's ever won the Premier League. The last English coach to win the league title was Howard Wilkinson in 1992. The top clubs don't hire English managers. So
Why not, do you think?
Well, because they haven't proven themselves. It's difficult. It's a catch-22. Without the big jobs, are you going to win something? And that is how do you prove yourself to be a top coach? But there is a pathway. Maybe they should start working on the continent, proving themselves in Germany, in France, in Holland, and coming back to be successful. But until English clubs, the big English clubs, appoint English managers, and a couple have. Graham Potter didn't succeed at Chelsea. They're not going to succeed. So the FA are probably right to look outside the box because there isn't an obvious English candidate.
But do you need to? Because I think that Gareth Southgate, in my view, was the best England manager we've had since Sir Alf Ramsey. I mean, it's just astonishing, really.
Then it's how do they get that little extra
Absolutely.
edge, isn't it? Because he was, you're right,
Yep.
that great. And I think everyone can look back at his time there, but they need someone to take them to the next level.
Yeah.
And who is that person? Tuchel's a proven winner. He's won the Champions League. He knows how to get the best out of his players. So I think it's time for something different, isn't it?
Yeah, I do think if you were so good under Southgate, and I think England were, and he sort of kind of almost made us fall in love with the national team again in his 8 years, which is no small feat, then I do think you've then got to get someone who's going to almost give you a shock treatment or sort of a final push to get you over the finishing line, because they've got the players, albeit an ageing defence. So I do think there's already frailties coming in as England's opportunity gone.
But there isn't an English school of coaching. Spanish football, we know what that feels like. Dutch football, we know what that looks like. There's a German school of coaching. What is the English style? And that's the issue, that there isn't an intellectual basis to English football. It's just ex-players running around like hurricanes trying to do miraculous things. And I think the FA are trying to address that issue, but it does take decades before you get someone like a Cruyff or a Guardiola coming through the English system. You need that intellectual basis, and that kind of has to be built from the ground up. Because what is a traditional English coach? Is it someone like Sean Dyche? Is it like John Still? I mean, that's basically what people think of when you think of English coaching. So that's the issue that they need to fix before you start thinking about the pipeline.
Well, let's see how the first German at the English helm gets on in that job. Let's go to number 4 though now, which I believe I have. Charlotte, do you want to do the honours? Oh, okay, let you open it. I think it's probably better than me doing it.
Let's do the FA Cup draw like this.
Not sure they got the viewing time.
Manchester City champions for record 4th time.
Biggest achievement ever?
No. No, it's not. I mean, I think, the year before when they won the treble, I mean, that was joint biggest achievement ever alongside Man United. If you win the treble, that is as good as it gets. To win 4 in a row, it's a huge achievement. It's unprecedented, and, it's erased great teams from Man United, Liverpool, Arsenal out of the history books. But I think we can't really judge Man City's success in recent years until we know the outcome of what's happening, with the Premier League investigation. I think that is the reality. People say there's an asterisk against it. Well, there is until we know the outcome. And if they emerge to that successful, then we can say this. Pep Guardiola's built this amazing team. He's an amazing coach, Guardiola. He's, that what he's done there will never be forgotten, no matter what happens. But I don't know if it's the biggest achievement ever. I think a big achievement, not the biggest ever.
It's a unique and a remarkable achievement in that. Simply because, why hasn't it done before? Because I think there reaches a point in it, even a great team, even a great generation of players, they must hit the wall at some point, because it's so exhausting, it's so, consuming, I think, mentally and physically, to get yourself over the line for one title, let alone 2, 3. And that's the reason why people haven't done it before. That's the reason why this City team is so remarkable. And I think that Guardiola deserves so much respect, in my view, as a coach, because he almost reinvents the game in terms of he develops players, he comes up with new tactical plans, he comes up with, inverted fullbacks, defenders pushing into midfield. He develops things that other coaches emulate and try to copy and work for. He sets the template, and that's why he's such a great coach. That's why this Manchester City team has been so great. It feels like, with an ageing squad, it's coming to an end. But I also think, this season they've had some turbulent times, throughout the sort of kind of the end of the calendar year, if you like. But it also feels like it's an ageing squad, but it feels like also they're paying the price in terms of energy and in terms of, what they've expended in recent times, because they're so exhausted. They put so much into winning 4 in a row, to me, they've run out of gas as much as they've run out of kind of fresh legs, and the squad needs freshening up. But that says to me, that talks to the achievement of it, and it's remarkable achievement.
Yeah, because I think I think at the end of the season after they've won it, it's like what's the challenge to go again? And the challenge is maintaining that level of excellence throughout, even though Arsenal kept pushing them close. The teams around them are getting better, and somehow there's no margin for error. You've got to be perfect, and for them to be able to pick themselves up and go again and again and again, you're right. There is a reason why it's not been done before.
Guardiola, everyone talks about his tactical innovation, the way he's going to move the game on stylistically. I think he's really underrated as a motivator of people. The way he got that squad, after they've just literally conquered the mountain, they've conquered Everest, they won the treble, and he gets them to go again.
Yeah.
That is an incredible feat of motivation, of goal setting, of getting your players to push themselves over the limit again. I think, yeah, they are paying for that this season.
The City have benefited from the fact that their rivals, certainly the last couple of years, have never been quite equipped to win the title. Maybe in a year or two that might change. I might see it this season with Liverpool, maybe Arsenal. But I just think Arsenal were a bit short last year. But I just want to go back to what I said about it's not the greatest achievement. I think I mentioned the treble. You've got to mention Arsenal's Invincibles as well. When we look back over the Premier League years, you've got Man United's treble, the City treble, Leicester winning the league, Arsenal's Invincibles. Winning 4 in a row, I don't know if that yet feels the same. And maybe it does, but I don't know. It doesn't seem to have that historical feel that the Invincibles did and the 2 trebles.
Welcome back to the final part of the Back Pages tonight, Christmas special. We're counting down the top 10 stories of 2024 with our esteemed panel. We've got John Cross from The Mirror, Jonathan Liew from The Guardian, Mark Ogden from ESPN, and Charlotte Dunker from The Times. We are on to number 3. Charlotte, have you got number 3?
Yeah,
I think I spied it over there.
3.
Go on, Jonathan. See if I can notch one up. No.
Oh. 0 from 3 for Jonathan, I think.
We go again.
Number 3.
Oh, I've got it.
Here we go.
Okay, Andy Murray retires.
So I love Andy Murray. I think Andy Murray, and I made this, I always remember, I think I was on the Back Pages tonight with you, Charlotte, and you shot me down in flames, basically. But I will make this claim that I think Andy Murray, as an individual sportsman, I think is the best British sportsman of all time. What he's done in tennis and for British tennis. I mean, we used to go into Wimbledon after Wimbledon after Wimbledon saying, when will we ever get a British champ? Where will we ever kind of solve this? And it looked so far away. And I think what Andy Murray has done for the sport in this country has been absolutely remarkable. I love him. I think he's a warrior. I think he speaks well. I think he's, to win slams in the best ever generation of tennis, I think, with Nadal, Federer and Djokovic. I think he's remarkable. He's up there fighting. He's been world number 1 during that time. He's won Olympic gold. He's taken us to our hearts. I just think he's, the way that he battles. And then the final goodbye in the Olympics was just everything, I think. He basically said, look, I'm going to go to the Olympics. He was so proud of his success in the Olympics. He was so proud to kind of be a massive part of that team. He threw himself into it, and that's what I thought, took it to its heart. He refused to kind of lose. He was on the brink of defeat a couple of times, wasn't he, before eventually it ended. But the warrior in him, which says it all as him as a sportsman, refused to let it go. And I just think he's been absolutely sensational. And he's not even ending it now. He's sort of kind of coming back as a coach. I mean, he's absolutely sensational. What a sportsman.
You're such an romantic, aren't you?
I love Andy Murray.
I agree with kind of 90% of that. You're right, he's a great ambassador, he's a great guy, but he's not the greatest British sports person ever.
Go on then.
Well, I mean, there's so many options. Daley Thompson, 2 Olympic golds in decathlon, it was absolutely amazing during the 80s. Lennox Lewis, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
Lewis?
Yeah, but he was an undisputed heavyweight champion. That is
good.
But I'm just making the point
the
that
greatest. I'm sorry.
Lewis Hamilton.
That will not do.
Lewis Hamilton. I mean, to be fair, Andy Murray has been great, but he's not dominated his sport, while he's played. So if he's not dominated his sport, how can he be the greatest British sports person of all time? You have to be at the very top for a prolonged period of time to be in that bracket. So I think, yes, he's been an amazing tennis player, great to win Wimbledon twice, but he's not the greatest British sports person ever. Sorry.
How do we catalogue it, Jonathan? Because do we just look at it in a British context, or do you have to consider the fact that his three contemporaries have hit 20 plus slams in the same period?
I think these things should probably be independent of context. I agree. Probably, Murray probably isn't the greatest. I think there is this need by our generation, or maybe the Murray generation to. We've been watching the greatest. I think it's just enough to say that he's not just an incredible player in a really tough era, but he's also an incredible guy. I think British tennis was always going to produce, if only by random chance, a talent like Murray's. But the stuff that it was the stuff around the game, the way he supported other British tennis players, the way he supported women's tennis, the way he spoke out on causes that mattered to him. He was always kind of a support for other players on tour. And I think the wisdom of the guy is that's what I'm going to miss so much. As much as anything he did on a court, he was just a really decent person. And I think elite sport doesn't produce enough of those people. I think it almost actively works against you becoming a fully rounded person. And I think that's the real achievement.
Charlotte, when it came to it, obviously there's sadness when a great retires, but with Murray, was there a measure of relief just because of the pain he seemed to have been in for a sustained period of time?
Oh yeah, he had the problems with his hip, didn't he? And he just kept fighting back from it and coming back. And I think it's fitting. I know we obviously talked about Jimmy Anderson before, but Murray decided, didn't he? He's like, I know that the time is now and this is the right time for me. So you're right in terms of, I'm sure there is a big sadness for him, and you read interviews with him about how he's filling his time, like how he thought he'd fill his time as soon as he retired. I saw that he was playing in a pro-am golf competition, and I don't think his golf is half as good as his tennis. But yeah, it's good for him that it was on his terms, and like he said, I think it was the right time for him.
He'd be the perfect coach for Emma Raducanu. He'd be the perfect guy to take Emma Raducanu to the top and a sustained period of success. I think
he's got Djokovic though, his great rival. He's now coaching.
Djokovic isn't going to be around for much longer, is he? So after Djokovic, Raducanu, make her the best.
Finish on Mark's specialist subject there before we move on to number 2 on the Crackers. Who's got number 2? John.
I have.
John Cross still undefeated there.
It's a technique here. Yeah, it's the competitive dad in me coming out. Here we go. Jurgen Klopp's shock Liverpool exit.
Well, it was a shock, wasn't it? I think we all remember sitting there. Was it? I think it was at the start of the year, January, wasn't it? And the statement dropped, and it was like, what? He's going. I don't know about you guys, but actually, there just wasn't a hint of it. There wasn't. You didn't think like it was coming to the end. It wasn't like the Liverpool were in a rut and it was like the end of a cycle and they needed a refresh or anything like that. It was just like at the end, this is it. At the end of the season, I'm going. Probably one of the biggest shocking sports stories of the year, I'd say.
They're on for the quadruple, weren't they, at the time?
They were, yeah. I've just called John L. romantic. I'm going to be the same now with Klopp. I love Klopp. I just think what he did for Liverpool and what he did for the Premier League, in time when you look back, it's been transformative. And who knows, Arne Slot may eclipse what he did, but I think Klopp was just brilliant for the club, brilliant for the city. If you go to Liverpool, people, even some Evertonians, believe it or not, think that Klopp has brought a real kind of positive spotlight on the city and helped the city grow. And he's just, without Klopp over the last 7-8 years, Man City would have absolutely steamrolled everybody. He gave us a great rivalry with Guardiola and City and Liverpool that it kind of on the par with Man United, Arsenal back in the day. So I think Klopp, a brilliant character. He is missed, even though Liverpool are doing well. He's just brought something to the game that, yes, I appreciate he would get people's backs up at times, and his behaviour on the touchline was pretty bad. But that was all part of the package, wasn't it? It was, Mourinho-esque at times, but I think Klopp was great for the Premier League.
It was always going to take something special to kind of make Liverpool win the title again after such a long period of time, and for Klopp to do that. But he did it by embracing, I think, the fans, and basically. That's why it was at the core, wasn't it, of why he was appointed, of why he was selected, because he just completely got it, and you could see that at Dortmund for everything that he did there. His style, of heavy metal football, which he coined, and was just absolutely sensational. Great to watch, and it's such an engaging character. Yes, he could be feisty in press conferences, couldn't he? And I'm sure we've all been on the end of kind of, some death stares and kind of, asking difficult questions. But I don't mind that, always makes it entertaining.
Nowadays, so many managers and coaches are kind of sculpted PR-wise. Don't say that, don't say that. With Klopp, there was no PR. It was basically what he thought he said.
Yeah.
And that was the best part of it, because you didn't know where he was going to go with it. But at least he had that confidence in himself and the personality to say, I'm saying what I think. If I get into trouble for saying it, to hell with it.
I think we forget that at the time he was appointed, he was arguably bigger than Liverpool.
Yeah.
In terms of the places he could have gone and the low ebb that Liverpool were at the time, they were falling over themselves to get hold of him. But what Klopp got, I don't know. He sort of gets what a football club should be. He's no saint, he's no angel. Like we've all clashed with him at certain times, but he kind of gets that a football club's first duty is to its people, it's to its community, and that it's to give people kind of a sense of hope, almost like a kind of a beacon of ritual and this all sounds like really kind of airy fairy romantic stuff, but that's the devotion that he inspires in Liverpool, but also to Liverpool fans around the world.
Should he be up with the all-time greats?
I think whenever we talk about the all-time greats, it's always how many trophies did they win, how many Premier League titles did you win. Obviously, he won one. So then, if you put him in a table, he doesn't rank up there. But if you look what he did for Liverpool, like the state they were in, like what Jonathan just referred to, and where he's left the club now, in terms of he's left it for Slot to be able to go in there, take it straight over, and to go on that remarkable run at the start of the season. Jurgen Klopp has to take a lot of credit for that, because that's the team that he's built in terms of they know what their roles are. The Slot's tweaked things a bit, but really a lot of his work was done for him before he got there. So I think he's definitely up there if you talk the Premier League era as well, he's definitely up there as one of the greatest that we've seen as well, for his personality as well. I think so many managers go into the ether and we forget about them, but he's definitely going to be one still in 10, 20, 30 years' time. People are still going to talk about him as one of the greatest managers that was in the Premier League.
Definitely left a big mark on us, but not number one for 2024. Have we got the final cracker, Mark Ogden?
Oh, there we go. So this is the Christmas number one, is it?
Christmas number one. Wonder if we can guess what it might be.
It's Wham again.
England lose the Euro 2024 final and Gareth Southgate leaves.
So it's a two-parter.
Yeah, well, we were in Berlin for the Euro 2024 final, and I don't know whether you had optimism going into the game, but it did feel like England were about to finally end that. How many years of hurt is it? I've forgotten now. I've stopped counting, but
58 at the time, was it?
58,
yeah.
But still, I mean, England got to the final without really impressing. It was a bit different to the last time we got to the Euro final, and it felt as though England lurched to the final and got there. By the time they got there, it's like, actually, they can win this. But it's like that kind of false sense of security, isn't it? You kind of believe the hype, and Spain were just too good on the night. And, it's a shame, because Southgate took England to places that, nobody since Sir Alf Ramsey's taken them. And I think it'll take time to look back and realise what a great manager, maybe not coach, he was a great manager for England. I think, like Crossy said earlier on, the England camp has always been a bit fractious at times, camps of players that don't get on, or egos and all this sort of thing. Southgate changed that. I think the beauty of Southgate was he was a great communicator, and the FA really, really was so lucky to have him. But he was able to blend that squad together and make people happy to play for England again. 2 finals and a semi-final. Prior to that, it was a desert of, failure, wasn't it, for so many years?
Look at how England played in that tournament. They were they weren't just bad, they were truly awful. Yeah. I mean, they were like barrel-scrapingly bad, and yet they got. I mean, if you compare their part of the final to who Spain had to beat to get there, they had to beat France, they had to beat Germany, they got Italy and Croatia in their group. They were very clearly the best team in the tournament. And England almost, they sort of arrived there dishevelled and almost by accident. So I think it put a slightly positive sheen on what was actually quite a rotten last couple of years for Southgate. I think he lost control of that team a little bit.
Yeah,
was that luck, or was there something that Southgate was doing just to get them over the line?
I thought he stayed on the tournament too long, if I'm honest. I think he was torn after Qatar over whether to stay or go. And I basically think that if you look back upon it, and we'll look back in 10 years' time, I promise, and say that Gareth Southgate was one of the best ever things to happen to English football. He's done a remarkable job as England manager, in my view, to get to 2 finals and then to a World Cup semi-final. But he's also re-established a connection with the England fans, which was lost, and they'd given up so much hope. So he's done a wonderful. Yeah, the beer cups was an ugly sort of kind of finish to that. But I do tend to think that there was only one team that sort of kind of looked fresh and exciting and looked head and shoulders above the rest as a result, and that was Spain. But at times, they were dragged across the line, sort of Jude Bellingham's spectacular sort of overhead kick, Harry Kane's goals, and, somehow kind of getting results out of that. But I do think Southgate stayed too long. I think you could see you know, it wasn't always a harmonious passage to the final, I don't think, but they somehow managed to do that. And I think that says a lot for Southgate, and I think it says a lot for the resilience of his team. You know, there's some really good performances now. I really don't understand where Jude Bellingham's coming from when he talks about being made a scapegoat for England's failings. I mean, blimey, we had praised him to high heavens for the moments of brilliance that he showed. You know, so I think that's kind of paranoia beyond belief, because he's one of the stars of 2024. But, you know, I just think England somehow dragged themselves to that final. Did I go in with it with hope? Of course I did, because I'm, you know, sort of kind of a very passionate England fan, as well as sort of kind of reporting on them for many years. And I was so disappointed for them that basically overall they were outdone. There was a fleeting moment when Palmer scored the equaliser.
And they basically don't touch the ball again until Spain score. I mean, they were really tactically limited. Like we all know the ability in that squad, and I don't think you could say, even though they reached the final, that they made the most of the talent in that squad.
Yeah.
I think for me it was him not being able to tweak the team in the right way to get the best out of the players that he's got. We all saw Lee Carsley did exactly what all England fans wanted and threw every single attacking player in the ranks on the pitch at the same time, and that did not work. So that was proof that Southgate was right to not do that in the Euros. But I think with the players he had at his disposal and the performances that they put in, I think maybe if he tweaked things slightly differently, I'm not saying the outcome couldn't have been different. I think we knew from the first group stage game that Spain were heads and shoulders above every other team in that tournament and deservedly won the competition. But I do think England's performances overall could have been a bit better.
But didn't he get the best out of his players and what he was at his disposal?
Not because he reached the final.
Yeah.
Well, not
basically,
played
only one team can win it, and basically, I just think that he took a slightly battered and bruised squad. Yes, I think that basically probably he changed a bit too much.
Yeah.
I think, and but maybe took too many.
Do you need to pick
younger
one of
players at
Foden
the
or Bellingham
expense.
rather than both?
Maybe, and maybe the balance of the team wasn't right. Phil Foden's just had the season of his life in the Premier League, and then basically shoved out wide, and you know they're trying to make Bellingham at the sort of kind of the heart of it, which is understandable because he's been fabulous.
We were at games thinking, make a substitution. Now he did against the Dutch with Ollie Watkins came off the bench and scored that goal. But I think there were times you looked at, you know, Harry Kane wasn't performing to his best. Jude Bellingham, I thought, had a poor tournament. He scored a couple of big goals, but you know, I'm not making a scapegoat of Jude Bellingham, by the way. But I think that Southgate could have been a bit bolder. But I do think, as Jonathan said about the fans throwing beer bottles at him or beer cans, you know, that is one of the images of the year. That is a really sad story because he, whether you like Gareth Southgate or not, he delivered so much unprecedented high times for the England team that to be treated like that by the fans who, you know, they criticised us for being negative. Well, that was terrible. You know, that was a real lack of respect. I think Southgate deserved better than that.
Okay, we'll end on a bit of a low note then in terms of number one, England failing in a major tournament final and losing their manager. We'll hope for better in the next Christmas special. But it was a furious debate. It's an agreed top 10, but there were some stories that didn't make the cuts. I don't know, Charlotte, do you want to give us one that perhaps you would have liked to have seen in there?
Mine's a more recent one. It's Guardiola signing that new deal. I think everyone thought maybe his dominance at Manchester City was coming to an end. I know they've been through a rough patch this autumn, so maybe it is. But he's committed himself to another 2 years, and who knows what he can win in that time. So, yeah, I thought that was a really big story.
Mark?
I'm going to go for Arne Slot at Liverpool. The start he's made is just incredible. It's almost unprecedented. It's better than Mourinho started at Chelsea back in there, better than Pep started. And let's be honest, when he came from Feyenoord, a lot of people didn't know who he was. You're having to check, you know, why Liverpool not got a top coach? Well, they have got a top coach. He was just hiding in plain sight in the Eredivisie with Feyenoord.
Jonathan?
Oh, I'm going to go Mark Cavendish. It's his final season in pro cycling, gets his record-breaking 35th stage of the Tour de France and then retires. It's an incredible story, an incredible guy.
A great story, great career. Where do we end, John?
Well, if the show is back pages tonight, it can only be for me, David Coote, because I mean the scandal that has followed the Premier League referee over the final few weeks of the year has just been remarkable, really. From social media clips about Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp to kind of party going. I mean, it has been a remarkable story which has captured so many back pages and column inches.
Certainly was. It's been a remarkable programme. Thank you all. We hope you've enjoyed our first Christmas special, and do keep a lookout for our preview edition looking at the new year 2025. That'll be coming out in a few days. So what leaves me to say is just to thank all our guests, John Cross, Jonathan Liu, Mark Ogden and Charlotte Duncan. Very Merry Christmas to you. Thank you for watching and Merry Christmas to you.